All right. So I wanted to do a quick video on movement quality and style today, rather than any specific technique. At this point, you should be starting to realize that my primary interest has to do with internal stuff, not external stuff. The external stuff is helpful, and we'll talk about that, of course, over time. But you can basically you have to find the techniques that are going to suit your body for your development, whether that be because you only want to study Tai Chi, or only want to study Bakwa, only want to study Aikido. Maybe certain techniques aren't good for your body. Great. Or, I mean, not great, but at least if you're aware of it and you look at it and you explore it and you say, hey, this isn't great for me, just recognize not every technique is for every single person. Not every technique is going to bring you endless joy and helpfulness, despite what the 5-minute YouTubers will tell you. This technique will ruin it or will fix everything. Bunch of BS, right? Don't listen to YouTubers. So anyway, but there's a lot of nonsense out there. This YouTuber says. So point being that technique has value, and any individual technique might be what you exactly need and might bring you just gold. The Bakwa I study is gold for my spine. The Tai Chi I study is gold for my legs. Aikido is the very best for body methodology. And that brings me around to a quick point. How do we move? How are we moving? How internally are we using our body? This is an essential question that is dealt with very differently in quite a number of martial arts schools that call themselves Aikido, Tai Chi, and Bakwa. Let me give you a couple really obvious examples. So with the Bakwa, here, let's use this stance. Let's not even use a stance. I might choose to use this stuff to push myself forward, right? Back here now, pushing forward. We'll come around to that because that is a part of the system that I've been trained in Tai Chi and Bakwa, with it being more important in the Tai Chi system and just elements of it in the Bakwa as far as I understand things. Again, I'm going to fill out my knowledge, but just a quick point is that you can practice by pushing. I argue that this is a hard element and that Tai Chi and Bakwa are hard, soft arts. Usually, not always, but usually. And in fact, there's a lot of hospital Tai Chi, which I'm mostly teaching you for the first chunk of time here, that's pure soft. But I'm not really convinced that it's the more traditional martial art. It might be that there were complete soft style Tai Chi systems, but I don't know about that. Assuming there were, though, I'll tell you about how they were moving in just a moment. But I want to make a quick point. These kicking styles where we do that, that's all hard style kicking. So when you start looking at a lot of Tai Chi systems and you see that kind of movement pattern, the only way you can apply that in martial practice is as a hard technique. As a yoga, you can keep it nice and soft. But as a martial technique, those kinds of kicks are hard kicks. There's no way of pretending around that once you understand what I'm saying in this video. So there can be pushing to go somewhere. There's some Bakwa systems that pull. So this stuff fires and sucks me in. So we've got pushing, we've got pulling, we've got what is definitely spoken against in Tai Chi systems, which is double weightedness, where I'm kind of pushing and pulling all at once really hard, right? Lots of hard elements in there. Some styles call that double weightedness. I should say I've gotten different answers from different teachers about what the words double weightedness means. But functionally, you don't want to push with both legs at the same time in the style I learned. Pulling style, I don't know. There's a lot of details. There's 1,000 different styles of Tai Chi at least. So nothing I say is universally true about all of them, probably. So, wow, I'm really rolling around here. But point being, there's pushing, there's pulling, and then there's what we really want to do. So here's the thing that we're really dialed in on. And in fact, I think we even have, I don't see it. There's a wonderful there's a wonderful book called Key in Daily Life by Koichi Tohei. And he talks about the four main principles of movement that he works with. And those are our four main principles in essence. If you can find that book, I thought we had a copy here, but it looks like it's gone. It's usually a yellow cover anyway. But here are the four principles: center, down-weightedness, deep relaxation, and extension. So what do each of these principles mean? So down-weightedness has to do with feeling things on the underside. The best way to begin learning that, guy, feel the bottom of your foot. Now, you can kind of be hard and do that, right? You can be hard and kind of be on the bottom of your feet with your mind. So down-weightedness, it's probably the most closely related to relaxation in my mind of the four principles. Deep relaxation leads to down-weightedness, whether you intend it or not. And what it feels like is if I'm being down-weighted, it feels like my flesh is really hanging off the bone. If I'm being up-weighted, there's a little bit more tension and I can feel the weight a little bit more here on the top. So just letting go and relaxing and then feeling that, like, I don't have much body fat and I work out pretty good. See how my triceps just jiggle? It's because I'm not tense. I'm holding them up in a relaxed way. I'm holding them up gently. There's a little bit of stuff that has to fire up here right now, right? So you're not going to see that same jiggle. Down here, totally jiggle. And that's because I'm being down-weighted. I'm not bringing a lot of tension to the equation. So down-weightedness is not just feeling the bottom of your feet, but it's feeling like the bottom half of every cell in your body. So half, on the bottom half is kind of what it means. It has to do like with that sinking and resting that kind of gets into your legs where it's like, I can't move my legs. How do I move my legs? Don't move your legs, move your center. Oh, suddenly it's easy to move, right? So that leads us to our next points. Let's finish talking about relaxation first. So deep relaxation and down-weightedness are almost this. They're very close to the same thing. However, you can kind of have a tension to you. I'm exerting it in my body right now, and a lot of me is down-weighted. I'm feeling the weight on my bottom of my feet, but there's a tension in there. So you can be kind of hard and down-weighted. Probably some Aikidoka would argue with that and completely conflate deep relaxation with down-weightedness. I'm not here to argue about how we define things. I'm just trying to talk about basic concepts here. Down-weightedness and deep relaxation definitely go together. Now, deep relaxation, we do not mean, speaking of the second principle of our four, deep relaxation, we do not mean flaccid. We do not mean just collapsed in a puddle on the floor. I've worked with students who actually thought of deep relaxation as basically being dead, like a stone on the floor, no movement at all, no heartbeat, nothing. But that's right where you can start to see that deep relaxation is not the same thing as stillness, because our heart is constantly beating and our arteries have this smooth muscle around them that squeezes in relation to that heartbeat to pump the blood to the ends of your vessels, all the way out to the capillaries. So there's motility in your organs and the breathing. Like, you're going to die without all of these things. Deep relaxation does not mean infinite stillness. Not the same thing at all. In fact, you can become quite still and be quite tense, right? So instead, deep relaxation has more to do with a deeply fluid sense of how you're working things. I really like the way my Tai Chi teacher said it. relax as much as possible while maintaining the shapes. So while you're first learning a technique, you might be like, a little extra rigidity. And then you're like, wait, how can I settle, settle? Oh, look at that. My spine just got more aligned as I let go of some pressure in my spine back here. And the form still looks, as far as I can tell in the picture, reasonable. In fact, it looks better. It becomes much more powerful. This is my fascination of soft martial arts, is that by letting go of strength, you become stronger. And I'm really going to take a few videos about that at some point. So deep relaxation is not just flaccid, and you're just trying to relax as much as possible for whatever you're doing all day long, every day. Same with downweightedness, same with center, same with extension. This is key in daily life. So, okay, deep relaxation, downweightedness, center. Center has to do with holding yourself here in your consciousness somewhat. It also has to do with moving this first. Do one little experiment with me. Get in a Homni-ish shape, something that's about 50-50, and rest as much as you can. Just feel the bottom of your feet. See if you can let go and let everything become heavy, heavy, heavy. If you really relax, you should feel like you can't move your legs. They should become so heavy that they can't be lifted up. And so how then do you move? You move your center. I drop it, maybe if I'm doing the Tai Chi style here for a moment, I drop it into one leg. I drop all of the weight of this leg this way. Man, I'm going to do it for real. Right? So it didn't even feel like I lifted this up, by the way. It felt like I sank its weight into this foot over here. So that sort of is one way of moving from center. Another way is to just fall out into open space. And this is a little bit more the Aikido idiom I grew up on. But get back into that spot where you can't move your feet. In fact, a great spot to do this from is here, with your feet about thus. It's a little bit hard for me without a lift, but bear with me. So if you stand here, again, if you just hang out here until you feel like you can't move your legs, super heavy, move this thing forward. It's kind of falling, it's falling to make the motion happen. You'll fall into a pretty good Homni. You can't see it in the picture. But if I do that, if I really, really, really move from my center, pretty much no matter what stance I take, I'll fall into a Homni. It's a little bit of an aside, but it's quite an interesting feature of what I mean when I'm saying Aikido is a discovery more than it is a creation. Aikido, not Aikibudo, by the way. So to move from center means to not necessarily lift, right? Mostly that when people say move from center to walk, they fade over to one side, and I didn't do it very well for a moment. You lift, step, lift, step. Now, I've been badly disabled since I was young, and this is a worthwhile anecdote right here. I was friends with a girl one summer, and she would walk and her whole body would do this. And she was like, I'm always so tired. I'm always so tired. And I was like, well, you're burning a lot of energy. This was the summer after I started studying Aikido. So I'd had about 6 months worth. I was like, you're burning a lot of energy going up and down like this. If you watch me move, my head doesn't do that, I'm moving this guy. So I'm not going, She's walking up and down a mountain just to try and walk down the street. And I watch people when I'm walking up hills next to them, and they're going, here I am, a cripple. They're runners, they're all sorts of stuff. And I'm just breathing smoothly and looking at them and thinking, dear Lord, you just got to learn to move that body correctly. You guys are great athletes who are just jacking up your bodies, and this cripple is keeping up with you without effort because I move my center and I just kind of let my legs fall rather than lifting a leg, lifting a leg. We're going to talk more about that because there's going to be a lot of people right now who are, something doesn't fit. I don't know what you're talking about. A lot of things I see often is if your legs are super heavy, you can't go forward. When your legs are super heavy, you can't go forward with the punch. You have to go back and then forward. I see this in Aikido a lot. It's not true. With due respect to those who think it, you can go forward. You don't have to go backwards first. And that has to do with learning how to really actuate soft energy from your center, falling into the shape rather than pushing into it or bringing some sort of musculature to create it. I'm actually doing the exact opposite. Everything that's holding me up over here, I let go of, and then I fall. And I fall keeping myself upright. My legs somehow magically always find the ground. It's amazing. So I say all that. We're going to come around on that one and talk a lot more carefully about it over time, because center is such a funny thing. But here's the last and key point about center. You can be hard and be centered. You can be a very hard person and be centered. I actually developed, as a Muay Thai and a Wing Chunner, a very hardened center when I was younger. And it's very common even in Aikido schools. Tai Chi not so much, because a lot of people aren't trying to be martial. They're just trying to learn, soft style. But a lot of Aikidoka are really hardened, to be quite blunt. And what I'm saying is you want to let go of all that hardness. If you want to learn how to develop a movement quality that is really keen, powerful, and actually takes the pain out of your body, you want to follow this movement pattern I'm talking about. So deep down weightedness, deep relaxation, center. The last one is extension. And I say the last one because I saved it for last, rather, because it's a little bit, it's only really obvious when you study Aikido. It's less obvious when you're doing Tai Chi. But if you are deeply relaxed, feet glued to the ground, deep relaxation, down weightedness, my center is just down on my feet, which means I can't lift or I'll give up on that soft style. But I'm going to lift. So how do I extend from there? Well, all you do is you keep a down-weighted extension quality. So I'm not going to lift, even though this is the muscle that has to fire to lift this arm. I'm going to do it by maybe subtly sinking my center slightly, boink, and I'm going to gather that energy here at my armpit. I'm going to extend it outward, and it should be an expression of my center. So those punches you saw me going at just a moment ago, those are just an expression of extension. But you'll also find extension, obviously, in a lot of other shapes. In Tai Chi, there's a really similar to Sayonage, or also called Kokyo Nage in some schools. This kind of a shape here, this called parting the wild horse's mane, right? And you can really, it's really easy. Like if I'm extending my center, not just extending out here, then my center is in, let me see if I can get a better shot on that. My center is making this shape happen, not so much my arms. And that extension that comes from it, a lot of times in Tai Chi, we're extending around a corner. That's why it's a little bit harder to talk about. But I'm going to uncoil that extension out into an uncoiled shape. And then you can really see that extension. And again, down weighted here, tricep, yep, nice and loose. Sense of down weightedness and extension. Extension's kind of the hardest to talk about without an actual partner to work with. So we'll be coming around on it, but you'll hear me talk about it less as time goes on. But those are the 4 principles. So center, you can be very hard and not a soft martial artist at all and be very centered. So how do you develop soft center? Let it sink. So this is the down weightedness. Relax, sink. Let this thing, I know everybody's ego doesn't want to hear it, but let it pooch out. Do not go all day long. Yes, we do a little bit of that in Tai Chi and Bak while we're perfecting our form during solo exercises, but we're talking about Qi in daily life right now. And again, we're not deliberately sucking in Tai Chi, we're just really trying to aim these things, and that draws your abs in. It might be worth exploring that for just one moment. Feel it out for yourself. Just let it all pooch out. Nice and cozy, nice and soft, nice and warm. And then feel how, if I'm going to really extend this down and then into a foot, my abs are just sucking in. I'm not deliberately too much. I'm aiming this hip and keeping the spine aligned in a way that keeps this sucked in. I'm not deliberately sucking it in, not deliberately. It's always a little bit of a paradox trying to talk about soft martial arts. But stepping back, talking from Qi in daily life, exercise all day long, let it pooch out, relax, and then just move it to where you want to go. Your foot will step. It'll catch up. There's two muscles that kind of share a same tendon that comes down into your lesser trochanter here on the inner thigh, and they run up your spine and or are down in here. Now, this one down in here is called your iliacus because it's right inside the scoop of your ilium, and the one that runs up your spine a bit is called your psoas. And both of them together do this motion right here, lifting the knee up. So these muscles are heavily involved with posture and stuff. And when you start to come out like this, so they pull up this way, right? So when you start to come out like this, as soon as you hit a certain tipping point, there's a stretch that has happened. And you've stretched that iliopsoas a bit. And they just kind of go, whoop. And so you won't find that it's hard to get your feet under you by falling out in space. It feels a little awkward at first, and we're going to do an entire lesson on that. But I just wanted to make that point. We're going to have to come over all of this information again. So deep relaxation, moving forward, just resting into the direction you want to go. Don't try and control it. Don't try and be good at it. Just relax. Rest down into your feet. So that's center. Center, let's work with the other two first. Deep relaxation, I'm just talking about, like, you can be centered and then super tense, and if you try feeling that out, you're lifting that leg, right? So don't be super tense. Feel it out for you if you want. This is pseudo interactive. I apologize. I should have formulated that thought for you. But I've got attention. Now I'm going to fall out there, and it's like, and I stepped, and my spine went, relaxed. Relaxed is where the real power comes from. My center will go there. And then the next is down-weightedness, highly interrelated with deep relaxation, but also it's worth mentioning, wherever you're making contact on the ground, that's the beginning of your kinetic chain. And without a familiarity and a relationship with that point, your kinetic chain falls apart. So, if I come in and I say I struck a wall right here and I had no connection to my feet, say my feet were a little out of alignment, well, everything else is out of alignment then, and everything else is going to kind of crumble beneath that. So learning to build that kinetic chain from the feet is super important. So that's down-weighted, which again has to do with feeling not just the bottom of your feet, but that spot where deep relaxation and down-weightedness are kind of the same thing. We want to join those together. And then again, the last one is the extension. And that one is, it manifests everywhere, and is still kind of the hardest for me to talk about. because again, sometimes in Tai Chi, you're coiling around a ball as you extend. So I'm extending my hips and center here, right? So there's the front side, the front load is there, and yet I'm extending and coiling the energy there. And so, yeah, extension's just a little bit tricky to talk about. But you do want to functionally think of the extension from down-weightedness. That point, wherever you're connected, needs to be built together and aligned to make this out here meaningful. And this out here can be like a handshake, boom. This out here can be picking up a glass of water. This out here, Aikido really works with the most powerful structures of the body really well. And we'll come around and talk about that some more. That's part of why Aikido is so great for talking about extension, is that just dealing with supernatural shapes. Okay, I think I've said what's needed to be said. I will give one more brief demonstration visually for you. I can push, I can pull, I can try doing both at once, a lot of tension there, or I can just, as I'm walking along, say I'm walking carefully, set my foot down, rest, down into that foot. Set my foot down, rest, down into that foot. Set my foot down, rest, down into the foot. And of course, when we're moving faster, we kind of project our center out subtly in front. I'm being just a little heavy, but I think you can kind of see what I'm saying, where I'm letting this thing lead. So I was putting my foot out in front, first more like Tai Chi and Bakwa. Now I'm showing you an Aikido expression. Again, so center leading, everything kind of follows the center. The stretch experience is happening here. So my center's really leading the shapes in this one. And that essentially is the movement style that is brought the very most value to my body and health. I do work with some of the hard movement styles a little bit. I've studied that Tai Chi much with a teacher much longer than the Tai Chis I've studied that are more like Aikido. But I study it as kind of a background art because my commitment is to pure soft style, because it's brought me the most health. And that's just that. And this way of movement that I've just tried to talk to you about, we're going to be working with lesson by lesson. This way of movement is the way of movement that has brought me the very most health. No questioning, it makes everything easier. Every single little motion all day long easier if you remember to line up these things. Get that extension into the right shape. Move your center to make it happen. Relax. All of these things. When you do those things, you can be very powerful. I've gone just a little bit longer than I intended, but let me give you just one more visual on this. This is actually super valuable to notice. So I've had a quad and a half removed from this leg. So my vastus intermedius, gone. That's your deepest quad. Half of my vastus intermedius, which is considered kind of your most important quad by some, gone. So I'm missing some bones. So if you watch me do like a pistol squat on my left leg, it's fine, no problem. As long as I'm paying attention to my body and not my head. But I obviously can't do it. I can't come back up on my right. I just practice trying to get all the way down without falling or losing control. And then I push, and that's how much I can come up. Okay, so what was the point of that? The point is, that's a hard style motion. It's a good motion. I practice it as part of my Tai Chi, but there's no way of really utilizing these soft principles. That's not true. I am using those soft principles, but they don't give me as much. They don't give me as much advantage when a move requires a lot of musculature. Is the way to put it. Not every move requires a lot of musculature. If you watch me, I think this angle will be best. If you ever watch me do Aikido, you'll end up wondering how the heck I stood up on that leg. What just happened there? I thought you couldn't stand up on one leg. And it's true, I can't. So what just happened there? Well, there's a couple things. One, I'm not pushing to make the motion happen. What I'm going to do is I'm going to roll my center over the top of my foot. Yes, there's a kind of muscular exertion in soft martial arts. I said the word pushing a moment ago inside. I will talk about some nomenclature things, but in a big picture sense, in soft martial arts, I don't like the words push or pull. They are actions that occur when I do soft martial arts, but they're not what I'm doing inside. I'm never pushing on something, pulling on something. Those words feel very loaded with a lot of hard energy to me. So yes, I'm using my musculature. There's a kind of contraction that has to happen. But that's not how I'm using my body, as it were. I'm not maximum effort, pushing into everything as hard as possible and hoping for results. No. I'm going to put my center right into this kidney 1 point. And I'm going to do it by rolling my center towards it, not by pushing up with my quad. And as I roll my center towards that, the bones get in the way. And the bones create an action that lifts me up by me sinking. And if you can understand what I just said right there, you'll understand miles and miles and miles of how to make your body work better. One of the common things I run into that I'll hear Aikidoka say these days is like, when you roll, don't, I'm going to set that thought aside. It doesn't really matter, the contrast, but there are a lot of Aikidoka who are still pushing with their feet and musculature. One great example of this is you'll be doing a really slow roll. Say a really slow roll down here, and they get to about here, and then they shove with the leg, and then they bump, because you're shoving. Instead of pushing with that back leg, I'm moving my center, and I'm extending my center in a way that those toes are doing a motion that's very akin to pushing, but that's not where any of my power is coming from. I'm actually getting it from my center. If it was coming from my legs, it would look like this. But I'm moving from my center. And when my center moves, I gave just the slightest push with my other foot there. That was unfortunate. It's hard to do Aikido when you're thinking. But the point being that you don't really want that push. Otherwise, you get the thunk, thunk, thunk. You get the heavy atemi that's wump, 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 because you're throwing yourself at the ground rather than blending with the ground. If you just blend with the ground, let me see if I can get this better. You just roll. And that one was pretty good. I didn't do any of the little pushing motions with my legs. So those are the 4 principles and a brief diagnostic of each of them. We're going to talk about each of them individually much more carefully and with partner exercises ultimately, but also just talking about solo exercises and how it all relates. But I wanted to get people started on this. 4 key movements of 4 key principles of movement. Move your center first. Be relaxed about it. Be down-weighted. Extend that center from the kinetic chain, so extension. In a sense, extend that center like this through your whole being when you're doing breath exercises. Again, that's a little bit complicated to talk about. We'll talk about it later. I think I've overwhelmed. Yes, I think there's lots of information here. Okay, thank you.